The year is 1898, and the Caribbean Sea is a hotbed of tension. Tension so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. In the great island nation of Cuba, the imperialistic Spanish oppression has finally crossed the line. The native Cubanos demand that the Spaniards leave their gorgeous homeland and are willing to engage in rebellion to accomplish their goals. Brutal fighting commences, and American citizens are outraged at Spanish atrocities. The United States, in response to the violence on the island, sent the USS Maine, a huge warship, to protect American citizens and business interests in Cuba, as many rebels were torching very profitable sugarcane crops. A supposed letter from the Spanish foreign minister had been intercepted and published in the New York Times. The letter is a discourteous criticism of American President William McKinley's diplomacy. The public takes this as a sign of national disrespect from Spain and demands Congress declares war. Seeing their opportunity, newspaper company owners William Randolph Hearst of the New York Journal and Joseph Pulitzer of the New York World understand that a war with Spain would not only sell more of their own newspapers, but move their companies into national prominence. Using sensationalist headlines and shocking stories of Spain's treachery and the horrors they commit against the indigenous populations in their territories, the Spanish-American War is the first press-driven war, fueling the public's hearty support for the intervention by the great American nation.
Spanish barbarians terrorize Cuba.
Spain is stealing Cuban goats.
Spanish people don't like cotton.
Spain has been infecting Cuban bananas with parasites.
Spain invented cancer.
Well, I hear Spain is home to the Zodiac killer Ted Cruz.
Suddenly, on February 18th, 1898, a devastating explosion causes the mighty Maine to sink in the dirty water of Havana Harbor. The press immediately blames the Spanish government without evidence. On March 28th, the U.S. Naval Court of Inquiry finds that a mine blew up the Maine, but it is already too late. The pressure on McKinley to go to war is enormous. It should be noted that at this point, American expansionists and those of humanitarian motives supported American intervention in Cuba. McKinley then sent the Spanish a list of demands that had to be met to avoid the war. The Spanish agreed to the vast majority of them, yet McKinley finally gave in to the pressure at home. On April 11th, 1898, he finally sent a message to Congress stating that he favored American intervention in Cuba. The next day, Congress authorized the use of force against Spain. McKinley reaffirmed that if war broke out, Admiral George Dewey, stationed in Hong Kong, China, should attack the Spanish fleet quartered in the Philippines. When it did, Admiral Dewey destroyed the Spanish fleet in the Pacific in a matter of hours. Dewey's surprise attack proved decisive in the American victory.
Alright, we march to Santiago, the Spanish stronghold.
Oh no! There's too many of them!
We'll have to launch an attack on San Juan Hill if we plan to win this war.
Yeah.
8,000 against 500. How are we losing this many people? We're gonna have to split up our forces.
Okay.
We're going to Kettle Hill. From there on to Santiago.
Yes, Roosevelt! We won!
America 1, Spain 0.
Effects of the war. The U.S. had occupied the Philippines since the beginning of the war in the Pacific Theater, and Filipino citizens had appreciated the U.S. intervention. But when the war was over, U.S. troops didn't leave and people started to rebel. This caused the Philippine-American War, which ended in 1902 with America being victorious and the lingering American occupation of the Philippines until 1946. In 1898, the Spanish surrendered and agreed to the Treaty of Paris. In the treaty, Cuba was recognized as independent, and the U.S. bought the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico for $20 million. The Teller Amendment stated that the U.S. would only control Cuba to establish a stable democratic government, then leave the government in the hands of the Cuban people. The U.S. followed through and left Cuba in 1902, but not before passing the Platt Amendment, which asserted the U.S.'s right to intervene to keep Cuba independent and with a proper government for protection of life, property, and individual liberty. The Insular Cases were a series of U.S. court cases that established the nature of insular territories, such as Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. The Supreme Court decided over many trials that not all constitutional rights were automatically given to citizens in insular territories. These policies in the early 20th century were very imperialism-driven. To this day, Puerto Rico and Guam are still considered territories of the U.S. and have limited representation and taxation. They are not equal to the states.